Like 26 minutes to 12 is to 1 is the time. My apologies. And as I mentioned to Theo Usherwood, a slight departure with my next guest. Dr. Ernst-Jörg von Studnitz is the former German ambassador to Moscow, a 5-year term from 1997 to 2002, and so well placed to comment on Vladimir Putin and the unfolding situation. But we begin, Ambassador, with a very personal decision. You've handed back your medal, the Order of Friendship, which you received from Dmitry Medvedev during that curious period when Putin stepped back from the presidency. Only 30 Germans have ever received it. I should begin by asking you, what prompted you to make this decision at this time?
You know, it was a very... hello, Mr. O'Brien.
Hello.
It was a very instantaneous decision. When I heard about the invasion of Ukraine on the 24th of February, I talked to my wife and said, I think I have to return that Order of Friendship. I don't want to keep it. This is an order that is bestowed on me by the Russian president, even though it wasn't Medvedev at that time and not Putin. But still, it is, so to say, out of the realm of the presidency. And I don't want to have anything to do with that anymore. And so, therefore, I decided to do away with it. The question was only, how do I do it? And then, after some talk with a good friend, my son-in-law, he suggested I should write an open letter to the Russian ambassador in Berlin, which I did, and include with that open letter the Order of Friendship, which I did. And then it was published through the German media,
Yes.
And finally also on British media. And so I think this was a necessary step to say, stop it, I'm not with you any longer.
May I inquire why you didn't do it sooner? I mean, no criticism by this, Ambassador, but what is it about the current invasion in Ukraine?
Well, I don't think there was such a moment where instantaneously one had to say, this is enough. Enough is enough.
Yes.
I mean, I have never worn that order except for one reception at the
Do you mean the medal itself?
Years ago.
Yes.
There I donned the order, but never again before, because actually I didn't really want to have that order at all. But with the then ambassador,
Yes.
Russian ambassador to Berlin, was a good friend, and I was very strongly involved in German-Russian relations, and it was his idea that should in somehow find recognition from the Russian side.
Yes.
And he prompted his government that they should bestow the order on me. And, you know, I couldn't rebuff a friend. And I say the then ambassador was a friend.
I understand.
I didn't want to rebuff him. And so I said, okay, I'll gladly accept it. And then I put it aside.
I understand. And I mean, your language in your return of the order was very strong. You described Putin as a power-mad Führer. When did you arrive at that conclusion? I doubt it was the same instantaneous moment that you decided to give back your Order of Friendship medal. When would you have first entertained the phrase power-mad Führer in your contemplation of Vladimir Putin?
I mean, power-mad is the conclusion of what he is doing. That I mean, it was his word. The worst geopolitical decision or fact of the 20th century was the collapse of the Soviet Union. And for a long time, I'm aware of the strong wish of Putin to somehow recollect the territories which have been lost after the breakdown of the Soviet Union in 1991. And so to say, the reconstitution of the empire, of the Soviet empire as such, is outrageous. It's outrageous to step over independent countries. And the Ukraine is the second example. The first one was the invasion, or the partly invasion of Georgia in 2008. And he had, in a way, threatened for years without any action, but nevertheless threatened the Baltic republics. So this is power is all that he wants, and he wants to be recognized in the world as one big leader who is only on equal level with the American president and the Chinese president, or Secretary General.
Yes.
Nobody else. That's what he wants. And that's what I mean is power mad. And this sort of developed over the years more and more. And for me, the conclusion when I wrote it that he is power mad was just the consequence of what I have experienced over many years already.
You were first posted to Moscow, I think, in 1969. And as you mentioned, much of your career was dedicated to Russian-German relations. I presume that this is by far the worst that relationship has ever been. Is there any way that this process can be reversed while Vladimir Putin remains in power?
No, with him, I don't think it will ever happen. I think the relation is broken now, and with Putin, it cannot be reconstituted. That's impossible.
You know him personally. You've spoken to him often, I think, and at length. How do you account for the escalation in his own conduct and attitude?
I mean, I'm very much impressed by the book by Kathleen Belton,
Yes,
Putin's People. And I must say, in a way, this book was an eye-opener for me, because it revealed that this is a long-drawn process which started already in Dresden in 1989 when he saw the breakdown of the GDR, that he thought this is the end of our Soviet rule in Central Europe. And through the years, he had only one aim, and that was to try to get Russia back on their feet, or what was the Soviet Union before, but Russia now, back on their feet and be a respected country in the world again, through means which are only against all what we embrace as democracies in the West. But you know, I think he is a big deceiver.
yes,
And, or if you will, a liar. He has been hiding his intentions as long as he was weak. And the weakness was only overcome gradually in the first decade of the 21st century, when oil prices rose to a high which was almost $150 per barrel. That at that time, all of a sudden, Russia could really think of becoming a respected big country again. And that's when the Georgian War started, which only 6 years later, the annexation of the Crimea followed, and the beginning of the war in eastern Ukraine.
When you say respected, I think perhaps we really mean feared, don't we?
Well, whatever. Respected through fear. Let's call it that way.
Yes, indeed. I look also at the German response to the original invasion in Ukraine 2 weeks ago. What do you make of that? The initial refusal to contribute weapons, or reluctance, and then I think the largely unexpected halting of Nord Stream 2, and then, Ambassador, the historical context perhaps of the decision to increase defense spending in such a way.
I must say, I was very ashamed about the German position which we took initially. This is definitely not my personal feeling and not my personal assessment of the situation as it should have been. But on the other hand, through years, which started in the late 60s with what we call the Green Revolution, and we have a pacifist majority in our country, which are two of the main parties of the present coalition are deeply steeped into this pacifist mood. We have to be friends with all the people, and diplomacy will do everything. But, they never realized the famous Latin saying, if you want peace, you have to prepare for war. This necessity to have at least something to rely on in case of need was simply forgotten or overlooked. We thought we are friends with everybody and we don't need that. And it took a long time. It took really the shock of the Ukraine invasion, that finally the Federal Chancellor, in his address to the Bundestag a week ago, was a turnaround, an unexpected turnaround, which came and which says we have to reconstitute our Bundeswehr and we have to take real steps in order to be in line with our Western partners.
So we are looking at a remilitarization of Germany in particular and Europe in general that perhaps would not have been dreamt of, well, certainly when you were in the embassy in Moscow.
No, that was definitely not on the order of the day. But on the other hand, what impressed me years ago, I read a long biography of Konrad Adenauer. And what is not known is the fact Adenauer was elected to be Federal Chancellor in September 1949. And in the same year, he already was convinced that Germany needed an army again. 4 years after the war, after the complete defeat of Germany, he was convinced if Germany has to find a place in the Western community, in the Western alliance, it has to have an army, which was a very strong and very complicated battle, a parliamentary battle for years to come. But in 1955, West Germany joined NATO. It was a necessity.
Of course.
And that was forgotten. We felt very safe and thought all the big things are done by our American brethren, maybe also Britain and France, but mainly America. We are safe there. We don't need a forceful army. But on the other hand, at the time of German unification in 1990, the Bundeswehr numbered 500,000 plus people, soldiers, 500,000. Plus, if you want, the East German army, which numbered another 280,000. And today, the Bundeswehr has 180,000 men under arms.
It's reflected across all of Europe. I mean, the decline in numbers in the British Army has been similar, and that process is now being reversed at one imagines at full speed, because the threat posed by Putin remains so acute and doesn't get answered by the question of what happens next. So I wonder what you know, Ambassador, about the people surrounding Vladimir Putin, the inner circle, if you will, and whether there's any prospects of them exerting influence on him.
The main problem, if you will, constitutional problem of today's Russia is the fact that there is no Politburo.
Yes.
Putin is acting alone. And in Soviet Union, after Stalin and after personal rule, as it was called in those days, the leadership in Russia decided it should be a collective leadership. And it was, after all, a collective leadership in spite of the strong overarching position of firstly Khrushchev and later Brezhnev and so on. But Khrushchev was ousted by the Politburo. And the three old men like Brezhnev and Andropov and finally Chernenko, they couldn't run the country anymore. And the Politburo then decided in 1984, enough is enough. We need a young leader. And they elected Gorbachev. Again, a decision of the collective of the Politburo. Something like that doesn't exist in Russia today. And that is a big problem. We have seen that the Security Council, which was assembled by Putin on the 24th of February, who are sitting all like pupils and being dressed down by the headmaster. Yeah, that was a picture. And the message was quite clear. I'm the boss and you are all minions. And I mean, how he dressed down Narishkin, the head of the foreign service.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a humiliation, wasn't it?
Yeah. Humiliation, right? That was it. And that was intentional to be known, because we know that was not live. It was shown 4 hours later again. So it was meant to be shown that he was in charge and that all his minions would be humiliated and would be told, "You follow the leader."
And against that,
or better
backdrop,
to say, the Führer. And
yes.
I intentionally put in the word Führer in
I thought so.
Yeah, intentionally, because I see many similarities between the man who ruined our country and the man who is going to ruin Russia today. Even the fact that Hitler hid in a bunker and Putin is hiding also in safe bunker and is afraid of being shown anywhere outside.
Against that backdrop, those two elements, the parallel that you draw so powerfully with Hitler and the unique status of Putin's grip on power in the Kremlin, how do you think the current crisis is likely to unfold, Ambassador?
I'm afraid the war is not going to stop. I don't see who would be able to stop Putin to follow on. He thought it was an easy go in Ukraine and that he would conquer Kiev maybe in 3 or 4 days. And his invasion has come to a halt in a way. And he can't make progress. And he is losing people and he is losing material to quite some extent. He didn't expect that to happen. And I mean, he is a man who does not want to lose. This judo man with a black tie, yeah, he never gives up. He fights to the very end. And that's why I'm very afraid that the war in Ukraine will go on for quite some time.
And can you see
even though I think he will not be able to win. Yes. Even if he would conquer the whole country, he will not be able to subdue them.
Can you envisage a NATO intervention in the absence of Article 5 being triggered?
No, I can't see it. And I hope Biden's words will kept in the responsible decision of all members of NATO, and Stoltenberg is doing the same thing. We must not be drawn into that, because that would be too dangerous, and Putin would not shy away from even using nuclear weapons. This is just too dangerous a thing.
Indeed.
I often think, when I think of what's happening in Ukraine today, of the winter war between the Soviet Union and Finland, 1939 to 1940. Stalin thought that was an easy go, and he would subdue the Finns within months or less. And it didn't work. It didn't work. And the Finns were smart enough to say when the defeat was almost impossible to avoid, that then they sent their Prime Minister Paasikivi to negotiate with the Russians, and they came to a stop of the war. Maybe that might be a possibility for Ukraine too, when Putin should realize that he cannot really conquer. But the other outcome might well be, Khrushchev's granddaughter, Nina. She is living in the United States, Nina Khrushcheva. She's a professor at which university, I don't remember. She wrote an article the other day, and she said, the two main dictators of the 20th century, Stalin and Mao, could only leave their post when they were dead, not earlier. And then she says, and how about Putin? And that's how she ends her article.
Gosh.
I think a very strong statement.
It is a very strong question, but very strong indeed. I have one final question for you. I'm only aware of two recipients of the Order of Friendship in the United Kingdom at the moment, including the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. Rowan Williams, and the other one is the Queen's cousin, Princess Michael of Kent. Would you encourage them to follow your lead and return their medals as well?
I think it would be a strong message if more people who received the Order of Friendship, be it in Germany, be it in Britain, or be it wherever, would return that order and say, we don't have anything in common with such such a medal, such an order that has been bestowed upon us by a president who, after all, or by a presidency, better to say, when the incumbent president is a war criminal.
Ambassador von Studnitz, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's 12:55. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we just spoke to the former German ambassador to Moscow, Dr. Ernst-Jörg von Studnitz. And I can't remember the last time I felt so completely awed by someone's grasp of history and understanding of the issues. I think we'll probably have to clip that one up and make sure it's easily available in full for listening back to. A couple of things, and that slightly haunting line at the end about the idea of Mao and Stalin being the only comparable dictators to Putin in the course of the 20th century into the 21st, and they both, of course, only left office when they were carried out in a box. Theo Usherwood has moonwalked back into the studio.
Because Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, has just been giving